President Biden inviting top congressional leaders to the White House today for what the administration is calling a critical closed-door meeting on Biden's national security spending request. It includes billions of dollars for Ukraine and Israel. This is the supplemental package. The meeting comes as lawmakers face a Friday shutdown deadline. A continuing resolution, which would keep the government funded until March, is expected to pass both chambers. Despite upset over another CR, the conservative opposition to another CR, and Nancy Pelosi's spending. Joining me right now is Representative Reschenthaler to talk more about all of this. Congressman Reschenthaler is the Chief Deputy Whip, Appropriations Committee, Rules Committee, and Iraq War veteran himself. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Thanks, Maria. I always love coming on, and please, as always, just call me Guy. You know, these discussions that Biden's having, what I find so alarming is House Republicans have said all along, we will give Ukraine aid, but we need border security in exchange for that. We need elements of what we call H.R. 2. That's the H.R. 2 bill, border security bill that we passed a few months ago. We want elements of that if we're going to go along with this supplemental. The fact that Jim Jordan, for example, is not in this meeting leads me to believe that the Biden administration is not taking border security seriously. And if they want that supplemental package, they're very likely going to have to give us border security in exchange.
So, I mean, are you going to dig in on this? I mean, look, I thought you were supposed to get a focus on the border in the spending package that now you're agreeing to, the continuing resolution. Now you're saying that the border security changes are going to be in the supplemental package. Are you guys giving in on all of this?
No, it's our number one priority is border security. Maria, we've got over 300 Americans every single day dying of fentanyl overdoses. In 2023, we had more illegal immigrants enter this country than we had births within the United States. This is a crisis that cannot be overstated, not to mention the humanitarian crisis with those individuals that have to trek through Mexico, Central America, et cetera, getting victimized by the cartels the entire way up, and then being treated almost as modern-day indentured servants when they get to the United States by the drug cartels. So again, we cannot overstate the catastrophe that is the southern border. That's why we need to make sure that we get border security. If that's in a future spending bill after we get through the CR, if that's through the supplemental that Biden is proposing, so be it. But we need to have border security at some point moving forward. Again, we've got to do something to address the catastrophe that is the southern border.
Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're saying, but are there any indications that this administration will do that?
The Biden administration, I believe, knows that this is going to be an issue when you're heading into the race in the fall. So I think that they are motivated. I think behind closed doors, they realize that this is a huge vulnerability for them and that Republicans have such a large polling gap when individuals are asked, do you trust Republicans or Democrats on border security? It's overwhelmingly Republican votes. And it's also becoming more and more of an issue. I mean, it's right behind jobs in the economy when you look at polling data. So this is a huge issue. And Maria, I might just say this, not only is it an issue at the border states, but because of these sanctuary cities policies, it's now become an issue in places like New York, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and elsewhere throughout the United States. Their incompetence on the southern border and the far left radical policies of sanctuary cities have made every single state in this nation a border state. And that's why it's such an issue. We've got to address it.
How many would-be terrorists do you think are in this country already?
Well, we know that over 300 individuals that are on the terrorist watch list have been apprehended at the southern border, which begs the question, how many got away? And we know that we have over 1.5 million getaways, people that have not been apprehended. So how many of those 1.5 are terrorists? Remember, it only took 19 terrorists to pull off 9/11. You have probably well over 19 terrorists in the interior of the United States. You also have terrorists in the Middle East calling for international days of jihad about every other Tuesday. So this is a huge issue for us to address, and it's a huge vulnerability that we have.
Well, I think it's interesting that now the Biden administration is putting the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels back on the terrorist list after the U.S. military carrying out another attack against the Houthis on Tuesday, struck anti-ship ballistic missiles in Yemen. Congressman, the Trump administration had the Houthis on the terrorist watch list, and Biden walks into the Oval Office 2.5 years ago and takes them off. Now they've got to put them back on after all of these attacks. Your reaction?
Well, it just goes back to what Secretary Gates said about Biden, and that is he's been wrong on every single foreign policy decision ever. And he was wrong taking the Houthis off. It was one of the first executive actions he did was delisting the Houthis from the terrorist designation list. And now you see a ragtag group of terrorist pirates interfering with international trade. You know, in the trade going through the Red Sea, Maria, it's a significant amount. It's roughly 10% of global commerce, roughly 30% of all shipping containers go through the Red Sea, and now you have these carriers saying they're not going to go through the Red Sea. They're going to go around the Cape of Good Hope through Africa, which is going to make American consumers have to pay more money for everything. Not to mention the fact that we're not showing the Iranians and the terrorists of the Middle East that we're serious. If Biden were serious about addressing this problem, we would have had strikes on the Houthis much quicker. They would have been much more extensive. And additionally, let's not forget, the Iranians have an intelligence gathering ship in the Red Sea that's directly coordinating with Houthi rebels. If President Trump were president, that ship would be at the bottom of the sea right now, and he would have sent a clear message to Iran that we're not going to tolerate any kind of interference with global trade in the Red Sea.
Yeah, and shippers and oil companies are preparing for the potential of hostilities. We spoke with the chairman and CEO of Chevron yesterday, Mike Wirth. Here's what he said about this.
Well, we move ships through that region on a regular basis. The threats that exist today have been increasing, and so it's something we're watching very carefully.
Are there plans to move the route, go around, like what, for example, Maersk had to do?
There can be plans to take alternate routes.
Do you see an issue in terms of supplies?
We haven't yet, but the risk is greater today than it was not long ago.
And we'll have more with the chairman and CEO of Chevron on Friday. But major oil companies, Congressman, are having to think about rerouting their shipments.
They are. And again, it all goes back to the weakness that Biden has projected on the international stage. Had we projected strength, the Houthis would not be attacking. The Iranians would not be fueling disruption throughout the Middle East. And again, our unwillingness to act quickly to take out the Houthi rebels and to take out the intelligence gathering ability that the Iranians are providing them have led to this chaos. And the sick irony of all this is who's going to pay the price? It's going to be the American worker. Yeah. The guy that has to go to the gas pump and is paying more because now the oil tankers have to go all the way around Africa instead of just going through the Red Sea. So again, because of Biden's incompetence, the American worker pays the price, but also our ability now to talk with, for example, to negotiate with China vis-a-vis Taiwan is greatly diminished too. You're talking about 10% of global trade going through the Red Sea. You've got roughly 80% of global trade going through the Strait of Taiwan. So China is looking at this and saying, if they're weak in the Red Sea, they can be weak in the Taiwan Straits. Maybe we should blockade Taiwan. That's the real danger with this.
That's a great point. That is a great point to make. And, of course, they'll do whatever it takes. They've said reunification is inevitable. But, Congressman, I want to get your take on your priorities because you're on the Appropriations Committee. We're facing off this deadline at the end of the week, or we could get a partial government shutdown. Then there's another potential shutdown that we could face on February 2nd. Will the work get done?
I think it will get done. I think the days of having a single omnibus package are over. Mike Johnson is negotiating very adaptly, and he's also focusing on making sure that we get a division. Now, do I think we're going to get 12 separate individual appropriation bills? Probably not, but can we get 2 or 3 tied together and move those through? Possibly, but I will support the CR because I want to make sure we don't shut the government down. However, as a general rule, I'm not a fan of CRs because we're continuing the spending of Nancy Pelosi. If you look at what the Appropriations Committee did this year, is we reprioritized a lot of the funding. So we're funding our conservative priorities and we're defunding extreme liberal Democrat priorities. That all is for naught if we continue to have CRs. So hopefully on the 1st of March and the 8th of March, we actually get some appropriation bills through. Well, before then, we get them through. So again, so we can reshift spending to our priorities, not Nancy Pelosi's.
Congressman, I know Pennsylvania is going to be real important for the Republicans come November 2024. What are your thoughts on what took place in Iowa? Are your constituents going to be there for the Republicans?
Well, they are. And what you saw in Iowa is something that we knew pretty much all along. This is Donald Trump's race. He's going to be the nominee. I think that's really good for us because he drives out, first off, we need Donald Trump back in the White House to stop all this craziness that you're seeing, inflation, chaos at the southern border, disruption all over the international stage. But Donald Trump also drives turnout. So in a lot of those seats that are marginal, that Democrats hold that were Trump seats, we're going to be able to pick up those seats. So I think in Pennsylvania, we have 3 pickup opportunities in the House. I think Dave McCormick is going to beat Casey, and I think Trump will win the state.
All right. We will be watching that. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Maria.